In early 2020, I embarked on a business trip on the Bernina Express train, which was traveling between two major cities. The train was modern and comfortable, and I hoped to have a peaceful journey. However, during the trip, I encountered events that still haunt me in my nightmares. For the first few hours of the journey, everything was normal. I was reading a book and having some snacks. However, around midnight, as the Bernina Express train passed through snow-covered forests, something strange began to happen. The carriage was empty and the lights were dimmed. I heard footsteps and whispers. I decided to walk through the carriage to find out what was going on. When I opened the door and stepped into the corridor, I saw something incredible. The carriage was filled with people, but they were unnaturally pale and seemed out of sorts. They were whispering the same word softly: "Leave." I got frightened and decided to return to my compartment. When I went back, the place was empty as if no one had ever sat there. I started to panic and tried to send a message to a friend about what was happening, but my phone couldn't find a network. The situation became increasingly eerie. The hours felt like an eternity, and I tried not to look up from my book. The Bernina Express train slowed down, and I saw a station where it stopped. I rushed to the platform, and there were people, but they didn't seem real. My panic reached its peak, and I decided to run away from the train and that strange place. After several hours, I found a city and re-established contact. I told the police my story, but no one believed me. They said it was just a dream or a hallucination. However, I know what I saw on that train was something unbelievable. Since then, I have never been able to board the Bernina Express again. In early 2019, I embarked on a journey through the western states of the USA on the Heavy Industries train. This train offered beautiful views and a unique travel experience. However, during this trip, something happened that was far from romantic. The journey started peacefully, and I enjoyed the stunning landscapes outside the window. But on the second day, I noticed a strange interaction between two passengers in my carriage. They appeared tense and agitated. One of them, a man, was trying to convince a woman that they needed to make aid transfer to escape from something horrible. They argued, and the woman began to cry. At that moment, the man stood up and left the carriage at the station. As the Heavy Industries train pulled away, the woman was still visibly scared and asked me to stay with her. I agreed to support her. For the rest of the day, the woman told me about her strange husband and his nonsensical tales of another world. She said her husband would disappear periodically and then return as if nothing had happened. Her fear was contagious, and I began to feel uneasy. At the next station, the woman got off, saying she had decided to end this and leave. I accompanied her to the door and watched her vanish into the crowd. I returned to my seat and continued my journey. However, when I came back, my carriage on the Heavy Industries train was empty. All the passengers had disappeared, and I was alone. I rushed to the corridor and found empty carriages. The train had stopped at an unknown station, and there was an eerie silence outside. I stepped onto the platform, and there were only abandoned buildings and emptiness. My attempt to find the woman or other people was futile. I remained at that station for several hours until the Heavy Industries train finally moved on, taking me with it. The place where I had been seemed like nowhere. Since that incident, I never heard about the woman again, and I couldn't explain what had happened. This event left me feeling like I had crossed into a mysterious world, and now I'm convinced that the Heavy Industries truly exists. This story happened to me a few years ago when I was getting ready to move to a new city to start a new chapter in my life. My belongings were packed, and I was already feeling the excitement of the upcoming move. My train was scheduled to depart at noon, and I decided to take my seat early to avoid any unnecessary hassle. There were many other passengers around me who were also embarking on journeys to their new adventures. Sitting by the window, I gazed at the passing landscapes. As the train approached the station that was my final destination, something began to feel strange. Suddenly, All the passengers in my carriage began conversing and exchanging glances simultaneously. I noticed that their conversations became increasingly nonsensical. They repeated the same words and phrases as if stuck in a never-ending loop. It was so eerie and unsettling that shivers ran down my spine. However, I tried to convince myself that it was just pre-move stress and attempted to ignore it. The train kept moving, and I tried to focus on my book, hoping it would help me relax. But the strange occurrences intensified. Passengers began echoing my thoughts as if they could read my mind. I realized that they all had identical, puppet-like faces with exaggerated facial features and lifeless eyes. My anxiety escalated into genuine terror. I attempted to approach the nearest person to ask questions, but they only continued to parrot the same phrases, like a broken record. That's when I realized that I was surrounded by something otherworldly, that these were not real people. Panic took over, and I desperately searched for a way out of the situation. The train continued on, and I understood it was taking me to some unknown, ominous destination. In a bid to maintain my composure, I explored the carriage and noticed an old, disused door at the end. Although it appeared eerie, it seemed like my only way out. As I approached the door, my uncertainty grew. Still, I summoned the courage to open it. What lay beyond was an absolute darkness. I had no idea what else to do, so I stepped inside the tunnel, and the door closed behind me. Inside the tunnel, it was pitch black, and I couldn't see anything ahead of me. Yet, I had a feeling it was my only escape from the nightmarish situation on the train. I moved forward, feeling as if time and space were warping around me. After a few minutes, I emerged from the tunnel and found myself on an old, abandoned station platform where there was no one else in sight. My train and the passengers had vanished as if they had never existed. I realized that I had entered a mystical place where reality and illusion were intertwined. This story has stayed with me, and I will never forget that train to a new life. In 2017, I embarked on a journey through Eastern Europe on the Eastern Express train, known for its romantic atmosphere and historical routes. However, what occurred during this trip was far from romantic. In the middle of the night, as the Eastern Express train passed through the dark forests of Poland, I heard a horrifying screech that pierced my ears. The carriage began to shake, and the lights flickered. Then, a strange phenomenon occurred. Shadows appeared on the external windows of the carriage. These shadows seemed alive and moved around the train. They passed through the windows and doors. I was terrified and tried to dim the lights, but it didn't help. Through the shadows, I saw figures resembling people, but they were distorted and incredibly unsettling. One of these apparitions approached me and whispered something in a foreign language I couldn't understand. It seemed soulless and frightening. The entire carriage was filled with these shadows, and I felt like they were infiltrating me. I lost consciousness shortly after that. When I came to, the Eastern Express train was moving again, and the shadows had disappeared. I told the crew about the experience, but they claimed not to have seen or heard anything. They suggested I go to a sleeping car and rest. Since that day, I haven't encountered those shadows again, but the feeling of dread has stayed with me. I couldn't explain what happened, and to this day, I consider it one of the strangest and most frightening events in my life.